Welcome to the next video. In this video, I want to talk a bit more about unit tests. And here I have copied and extended our unit test code from the last chapter. So here I have our tests directory where I have copied the test_vector.py file, and I have extended the tests for our vector test class. So once again, if you want to test something, you should create a class that inherits from the unit test.test case base class. And my recommendation is for every method of the to be tested class, you should create in your test class also a method. So for example, I have created here a method that is called test_init. And in this method, I want to test the dunder_init method from our vector class. Furthermore, I have created here, for example, a test_call method, and this method will test the dunder_call method from the vector2d class, and so on. So this is my recommended way of structuring such a test class here. And now I want to show the assert statements that I have used here. As I already showed before, you can use, for example, assert equal and assert not equal, which is pretty straightforward, the idea of asserting equality or non-equality of some values. And there are some more assertion statements that you can use. For example, it is pretty common that your classes later on will have at some point exceptions. And you can also check if a function call or a method call would raise an exception. So if I go into our implementation of the vector2d class, and here I'm in the test method test_init, I also want to test our raise statement here, so our exception raising. And to do so, I have added here some assert raises function calls, and for assert raises you pass at first the expected exception, and the second would be a callable. So for example, the function or method you want to test, and all other parameters would be the arguments for this callable. So for example, if you want to assert raises your initializer function, you would pass here the vector object itself. So a class is a callable by itself, and if you call this object of the class, under the hood, the dunder_init method would be called. So here our callable is the vector2d class. And here arguments 3 and 4 would be the arguments that would be passed into the callable that we have chosen here at the second argument. So under the hood, the call would be vector2d of 0 and a as a string, for example. So this would be the call that is executed under the hood. And this call here would raise an exception because the y value that is passed in is here a string. And the only allowed types here are support floats, so a real number. And since we passed in here a string, we would go into this else statement here and would raise a type error. Hence, I have tested here for a type error that should be raised. So if you use this assert raises method here, you pass in the exception that should be raised by your Python code. So as I did here, there should be a type error exception. Okay, furthermore, let's go on. So for example, here I've created a test_comparison method, and you can also compare with, for example, less equal, or greater equal comparisons. So as you can see here, I used assert less and, for example, assert greater. So you can use these assertion statements for every comparison operator, obviously. And furthermore, you can also here use assert almost equal, since comparing float values is not that easy due to inaccuracies for float representation in your computer. So if you want to compare float values, for example, you should rather use assert almost equal instead of assert equal. So assert equal only for integer types or booleans, strings, and so on, and assert almost equal for floating point values. And here I have some more assert races, for example. So as I said before, you just pass in the exception that should be raised. So next here, another example of assert races, because in the first example that I've showed you for assert races, I just passed in the vector object or the vector name, as you saw. And this would call the initializer function under the hood. But if you want to choose any other method of the class, so for example, here the check vector types method, for example, you should call it via vector2d.check vector types if it is a static method. So this method is a static method. And if the method that you want to test is just a standard instance method, for example here dunder trueDiff, which is a dunder method for the division, you can just call it here on any created instance of the class. So here v1 is an instance of the class, and I could call here self.v1.dunder trueDiff, and this is just the object of the class instance method. And all other arguments are then passed into this function that this callable that I've passed here at the second argument. And that was another video about unit tests. If you have any questions regarding this, you can contact me. In the next video, I will show you how you can use the test explorer here in VS Code. And after that, I will show you how you can compute the code coverage of your code. Okay, then we will see us in the next video. Bye bye.